Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. I'm Lynn Martin, your worship associate this morning. Our church is a place where you can be your authentic self. We want you to bring your full identity, your questioning mind, and your open heart. We're a community committed to social justice and to supporting the various spiritual and ethical paths of our members and friends. We welcome you warmly and invite you to join us at coffee hour after the service in the room across from our main entrance. Please be sure to read the announcements and inserts in today's order of service, where you can find important information regarding accommodations in our building, as well as upcoming events. The flowers today were donated by Beth Lutz in honor of her parents' wedding anniversary. And now we have a Did You Know moment from Lois Gish.
Do you know registration for the UUA General Assembly is now open, and you can take advantage of early bird pricing through the end of this month. GA is taking place in Baltimore, Maryland this year from June 18 to 22nd, but you can also attend virtually from the comfort of your little office and with your computer. I love GA because it models beloved community, and there is more diversity found there than in most congregations. I love the variety of educational workshops, the inspiring worship services with great music, and singing with 1,000 or more UUs. Even the business meetings are interesting as we listen to each other and work to make a better association. General Assembly brings us together to better live out our faith and our values as the powers that be seek to dehumanize our trans siblings, separate families, deport people, and strip access to medical care, among other things, we cannot be silent. I go to GA for comfort, inspiration, and the courage to resist injustice. Together, we can make a difference. Love will guide us as we draw the circle wide. Come to GA.
So before we continue, let's pause for a moment to wave to the people watching from home, and then rise, greet our neighbors, say hello in the chat, and when you hear the singing bowl ring, please return to your seats. Lights the chalice this morning, I share these words by Viola Abbott. As we light this chalice this morning, may it serve to give us clarity of purpose and illumine our way as we set about doing the work of this congregation in commitment, in cooperation, and in love. Now please rise as you're willing and able for our first hymn, number 346 in the gray hymnal, Come Sing a Song with Me.
Well, good morning, everybody. So our meditation this morning is one you've heard before, but as I've said at least once, maybe twice from the pulpit since my arrival, I'm not an informational preacher. Meaning, oh, it's more than all right. It's very important. Meaning, my experience of Unitarian Universalist congregations is that they love to acquire information. So they like to hear a lot of new stuff and new ideas, and also get your New York Times bestseller reverb from the pulpit. It makes us all feel like we're on the same page and talking the same game. That's informational preaching. I consider myself a transformational preacher, which means, from my point of view, the point of my ministry and the point of churches in general is to change lives. And you can't really change much if all you're about is acquiring new information. Sometimes you got to return to that new information over and over and over again until it finally reaches a critical mass in your brain and it has to leak down into your heart where there's more room, and then it begins to work its magic on you. And that's why I return to certain pieces of wisdom over and over. And the hope is, if you've heard this before, you'll hear it at a different level today. And it is a wonderful poem to set up this morning's sermon. It is from Hafez. I don't think I've thrown a mystic poet at you in a while. And it's entitled, "I Have Come Into the World to See This." I have come into the world to see this. The sword drop from people's hands at the height of their arc of anger. Because we have finally realized there is only one flesh we can wound, and it is His, the Christ, our beloved's. I have come into the world to see this. All creatures hold hands as we pass through this miraculous existence we share on the way to a greater sense of our common being, a sense of ecstatic light, forever entwined and at play with Him. I have come into the world to hear this. Every song the earth has sung since it was conceived in the divine's womb. Every song by wing and fin and hoof. Every song by hill and field and tree and woman and child. Every song of stream and rock, every song of tool and lyre and flute, every song of gold and emerald and fire. Every song the heart should cry with magnificent dignity, to know itself as God. For all other knowledge will again leave us in want and aching. I have come into the world to experience this. People so true to love, they would rather die before speaking an unkind word. People so true, their lives are His covenant, our promise of hope. I have come into the world to see this. The sword dropped from people's hands at the height of their arc of rage, because we have finally realized there is only one flesh we can wound. This morning is about this pulpit. It's not about the life of the church in general. It's not about our committees. It's not about our coffee hour or our parking lot conversations. It's about this pulpit. And by extension, this pulpit. More academically stated, it's about the free pulpit tradition that is granted to every Unitarian Universalist minister, and how I have come to view the purpose of the pulpit in the context of my own ministry. I almost never read a sermon, but I'm going to read this one this morning because I want to stay on track. And it's impossible to give a comprehensive sermon about today's topic in less than 2 or 3 hours, which is what's going to happen if I don't stay on track. And some of the things I'm going to say this morning might chagrin some of you. Some of the things I'm going to say this morning might bring solace to some of you. So the sermon is grist for the mill, and probably a conversation if we'd like to carry on further, if folks want to do that. But before going to the discussion of the pulpit, I'm going to back up and tell you a little bit more about why I became a Unitarian Universalist minister, which would have been right about 1990, 35 years ago. So, when I was taking clinical pastoral education, I met a woman who was a Unitarian Universalist student studying at Meadville Lombard. And I mentioned to her that I'm running across a lot of you weird people at divinity school, and I think I'd like to learn more. So she loaned me some books. And I sat down and I read those books, which was a lot for me to do because some of you know, most of you don't, I have a reading disability. So reading is a chore for me. But I was motivated. And I read books on the Unitarian history in Europe and the Unitarian history in North America, and the Universalist history in Europe, and the Universalist history in North America, and the Unitarian Universalist history in America since 1961. And reading those books, it was to a great extent the reason I became a UU. I found in those books incredible theological freedom, and I found in those books a social vision grounded in that theology that I thought was impressive and transformative. And so it's citations like these that led me down this path. The foregoing generations beheld God and nature face to face. We through their eyes. Why should we not also enjoy an original relation to the universe? Why should we not have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not of tradition, and a religion by revelation to us and not the history of theirs? The sun shines also today, so let us demand our own works and laws and worship. From the pen of, from the pen of, good heavens. We're going to have to do some UU history next year. Ralph Waldo Emerson. I mean, I don't want to shame you all, but shame on you all. Well, you're probably not going to get this, which means you probably will. So here's another one that I found profoundly moving. Go out into the highways and byways of America. You may possess only a small light, but uncover it. Let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Do not push them deeper into their theological despair, but preach the kindness and everlasting love of God. Anybody know who that is? John Murray. You get a free cup of coffee, Linnea. John Murray is the founder of Universalism in North America. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Do not push them deeper into their theological despair, but preach the kindness and everlasting love of God. And then there's this one, not from a Unitarian Universalist, but you'll often find this quoted in Unitarian Universalist literature. Could we throw that first slide on the PowerPoint up there while I read this? He drew a circle that shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took him in. Okay. For me, Markham's poem, this is by a poet named Edwin Markham, has always expressed the epitome of Unitarian Universalism. It is a beautiful expression of unconditional love and radical inclusivity. Unconditional love and radical inclusivity, my friends, is the purpose of the pulpit in the context of my ministry. If you haven't figured that out by now, you haven't been listening. I talk an awful lot about unconditional love and radical inclusivity. Here's an FYI about Edwin Markham, by the way. He was a Christian. He was a poet who straddled the end of the 19th century and early 20th century. And he was also a Christian social reformer. he touched upon issues like the working conditions of agricultural laborers and child labor. He penned poems and books in this regard. So not only was he a poet and theologian, he was also a reformer. So there's the prelude. I'm going to talk about mostly two things for the next 10 or 12 minutes. Theology and social justice, which is closely wedded to politics in today's UU world. The UUA has this committee called the Commission on Appraisal. The task of the Commission on Appraisal is to provoke deep reflection, energizing and revitalizing our UU movement. Here's a citation from the Commission on Appraisal. There is more than a suggestion that the movement has drawn to itself a many people constitutionally afflicted with indefiniteness. Definiteness is dodged as a possible instrument of bondage. This attitude, it is submitted, implies neither a high view of human nature, nor free use of intelligence, nor a great confidence in the quest for truth. I'm going to reread that. There is more than a suggestion that the movement has drawn to itself a many people constitutionally afflicted with indefiniteness. Definiteness is dodged as a possible instrument of bondage. This attitude, it is submitted, implies neither a high view of human nature, nor free use of intelligence, nor a great confidence in the quest for truth. Does that sound like Unitarian Universalism to you? Me too. You want to hear something very sad? You want to hear something very interesting? That was written in 1936. And it still rings true today, nearly 90 years ago. This tendency for UUs to be constitutionally afflicted with indefiniteness, I love that phrase, soon gave rise to rational scientific humanism. For the better part of the last 100 years then, rational scientific humanism has come to dominate our movement, embodying a fervent, even aggressive, anti-spiritual expression. Here's some anecdotal evidence for that. One of the first few sermons I did, I must have used the word God. And one of you, yeah, I know, are you okay? Medic! And one of you came through the line, who shall remain nameless, and said, I've been coming to this church for over 30 years. And now you're telling me I can use the word God? Coincidentally, this week I had a call from somebody who got wind of our adult education program and was interested in possibly engaging me around some spiritual direction and taking some of our classes, and shared with me that this person had been in our church 7-8 years ago. And I said, well, pray tell, why did you stop coming? Because I ran into somebody in coffee hour who told me this is a humanist congregation, and if I'm not humanist, I would not be comfortable here. It only takes one person, folks. I have my own anecdotal stories to tell. I am unabashedly theistic. And once during coffee hour in a previous congregation I served, I overheard a group of humanists in the congregation during coffee hour talking about my theology, and one said, "I thought he was supposed to be smart." And another said, "Alex has gone over to the devil." These are commonplace utterances in UU circles in our association. Though admittedly, the pendulum has begun to swing slowly back toward the center, somewhat more toward the spiritual. I must acknowledge that. But the manner of the swing, in my mind, is dubious. But I don't have time for that one this morning. But in some, there is an aggressive anti-spiritual expression that belies the unconditionally loving and radically inclusive message we should be speaking from our pulpit. Despite our professions, we have drawn a circle that keeps theists out. All right. Let's talk a little bit about social justice. I am aware of a simmering frustration about the fact that I have not addressed social justice from the pulpit, which in today's parlance is rarely separated from politics. So I hope my following remarks give you at least some understanding of why I do not talk about politics, really per se, because I will, when possible, touch upon social justice if it doesn't have to be tainted with political bias. But I want to give you a sense of why I don't do politics from the pulpit, and hopefully you'll have some understanding after these remarks as to why I'm very sensitive to this. And these remarks certainly aren't exhaustive. They're beginning, possibly, of a conversation. So I'm going to start my remarks with another short reading, which I actually shared not too long ago in my sermon, "One of These Things is Not Like the Other." For 50 years, the UUA has conducted a virtually unprecedented experiment, advancing a religion without doctrine and hoping that welcoming communities and shared political causes, not creeds, will draw people to its pews. Leaders say its no religious questions asked style positions the UUA to capitalize on liberating trends in American religion. But as the UUA turns 50 this year, some members say a midlife identity crisis, trying to be all things to everyone, is hampering outreach and hindering growth. That's an article by Daniel Burke, 2011, and I can't recall where I found that. As I've watched the UU landscape over the 35 years of my membership, I have watched our pulpits become increasingly, unabashedly political. And it has disturbed me. Whereas we UUs once spoke powerfully and with conviction about social causes, the kind of causes I read about in those books that motivated me to become a UU, racial justice, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, the rights of immigrants, we have a proud list. We no longer seem capable of speaking powerfully and with conviction about social causes. Pray tell, you say. We have somehow reached the point where we have come to conflate social causes with politics. I think this is a really important suggestion for us to consider. That we somehow have reached the point where we have come to conflate social causes with politics, and we demonize those who don't march to the beat of the liberal drum. We no longer speak about social causes, we speak about politics. For every social cause we champion, we demonize political figures. I'm all for speaking and acting powerfully with conviction regarding social causes, but I will never be party to the politicizing of the pulpit that is running rampant through our association these days. This politicizing has become so toxic that we've become far too comfortable dehumanizing those not in our circle. This is not an exaggeration. The anecdotal evidence is abundant. In my mind, the toxicity of our political penchant was clearly demonstrated to me when I heard several people of liberal ilk make snide remarks about the fact that Donald Trump survived the assassination attempts on his life. This fills me with liberal shame. Friends, profess it with our lips till our liberal hearts are all aflutter. But the truth is, we are a long way from love. Our aggressive political expression belies the unconditionally loving and radically inclusive message that ought to be the central message of our pulpits. Despite our professions, we have drawn a circle that shuts Republicans out. Both theologically and socially, i.e., politically, we have become our own worst enemy. We have become so theologically suspect and so politically fascist that we have squirreled ourselves away into a corner of cultural irrelevancy. To make this point, let me share some statistics with you. Here's where you get some information. In 1968, adult membership in the UUA stood at 177,431. That's the largest number of adult members since the merger in 1961. The number of children enrolled in religious education in 1968 stood at 104,876. In 2025, adult membership in the UUA stands at 130,265. That's a 27% drop in adult membership. Now hold on to your seats. The number of children enrolled in religious education stands at 22,693. That is a 78% drop in the number of children enrolled in religious education. So what do these numbers indicate? In my thinking, they indicate that from both a theological and a political perspective, we have become far too comfortable drawing a circle that shuts others out. So at the beginning of the sermon, I said that this sermon is about how I have come to view the purpose of the pulpit in the context of my own ministry. When I first arrived here, I said that my ministry is rooted first and foremost in love. Since my arrival, that has been the primary theme of my preaching, my teaching, and my pastoral care. Especially regarding my preaching. When I preach from the pulpit, I feel that it is my obligation to speak of unconditional love and radical inclusivity. Not as a prosaic, abstract idea, but as marching orders for liberal religion. So hence, I cast a broad theological net so that nobody feels theologically alienated from our sacred space. And I don't venture into politics, because it is impossible in today's world to venture into politics and not draw a circle that shuts others out. If I were to try to sum up my approach to the pulpit, I would have to quote James Finley. James Finley is a wise Christian contemplative teacher who said, "Do not break faith with your awakened heart." That lived on the inside of my car visor for quite a while. Do not break faith with your awakened heart. Ever. Ever. My awakened heart enjoins with love, which has the wit to win. I only draw circles that take others in. After all, can't we have at least one sacred hour of time and space a week that is an oasis of unconditional love and radical inclusivity? But like I said, this is about the pulpit. This isn't about the rest of our congregational life. I'm not advocating that we stop working firmly for social justice. I'm only talking about my approach to the pulpit. But let me talk about social justice for just a minute. I was having a conversation with a colleague the other day, kind of about this issue, but this was tangential, but it came up. And I was listening, and I was hearing what I always hear. It is our job as UU ministers to stand in the pulpit and resist injustice. Okay. And to cast political aspersions. And. So I gently suggested, after I heard the reasoning behind this, I said, I'm not so sure that our primary call as UU ministers is for justice, especially in a world where justice is inseparable from politics. I think our primary call as UU ministers is love. And that's why I take the approach I do. So with love in mind, I'm going to suggest one social justice idea for you this morning. So you can't say he never talks about social justice. I'll just hold it. I've been thinking a lot about what is meaningful social justice. There's a lot of conversation and ranting and righteous indignation that goes on in the name of social justice. And as I watch this over the years, it suits our anger around the injustice we see, but it's not the most effective strategy for action. I don't think it changes the world much. The world is more divided today than it was a decade ago. And I think the way we approach social justice / politics is part of that problem. So I challenged myself, what would be a meaningful social justice suggestion? And I came to the conclusion that the most profound social justice action we can take is to rehumanize one another. When we live on such a cultural divide, those who don't occupy our space increasingly become abstract. And when we think of people as abstractions, we dehumanize them. And I think if we were to rehumanize one another, we might have somewhat of a path forward. But it's a tall order. Do you think it's too tall of an order? I don't think so. I'm going to share a video clip with you. It's about 1.5 minutes long, so here's what it's about. I am a kind of a geopolitical nut. Even though I don't talk about it from the pulpit, I'm watching geopolitics like a hawk. And one of the things I'm also fascinated about is World War II, and I'm particularly fascinated about the Battle of Stalingrad, if you know that. That is a battle where more Russian and German soldiers were lost than anywhere else in the war theater in World War II. It was a horrific battle. Eventually, the Russians pushed the Germans out. Toward the end of the war, when German soldiers were being taken captive, they found a lot of starving German soldiers, and they found a lot of wounded German soldiers, and a lot of German soldiers dying from disease. But now that they were POWs, by law they had to be cared for. The clip you're about to see is about a Russian Jewish nurse who came to work with those prisoners of war. If she could rehumanize them, we can rehumanize anybody.
The Soviet doctors didn't give up. They helped their enemy to the best of their ability.
During the epidemic, we had a Jewish doctor, a lady, who treated us with great humanity. She came from Leningrad. She'd lost an arm during the German bombardment, and all her family were killed. And yet, she looked after her German patients 100%. She did everything she could. She personally saved my life by sending me to a field hospital against my will. If she hadn't done that, I would have caught typhus.
The medical staff tried really hard. Our chief medical officer used to say, "We are dealing with human beings. At this moment, there are no fascists, only sick men."
So let's end with just a thought, and then we'll sing our song. Consider that from every eye into which you gaze, God is gazing back at you. That's a recipe for rehumanization. Our final hymn is All I Ask of You. Let's stand like we do. Let's look across the way, unless you need to use a cheat sheet. Let's do this, all I ask of you, and then you do all I ask of you, and then you do Ishkala Ma'abudli La, then you do Ishkala Ma'abudli La. And let's do that 4 times, Jared, if that's okay. All right, so we'll start with this side.
Mary, since I don't see Carol, would you mind extinguishing the chalice for us this morning? No. Oh, there. Oh, sorry, Carol, come on up. Okay. Sorry about that. So as Mary extinguishes the chalice, may we remember that the work of justice, inclusivity, and unconditional love is ours to continue, both here and beyond these walls.
Hello, congregation, and thank you, Jera. This is a bit of a testimony. And just before our beautiful choir sings, I'm going to sing based on all that I've heard. Might sound a little different for you, but enjoy it. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. You know the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. This peace that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This peace that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This peace that I have, the world didn't give it to me. And you know the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. This love that I have, the world didn't give it to me, it's true. This love that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This love that I have, the world didn't give it to me. And you know the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. I love you, ain't nothing you can do about it.